Thank you for coming to today's presentation. I'm George McGonigal, Chief Operating Officer here at Plymouth Harbor, and I'm proud to introduce today one of our many resident authors, Dr. Bernard Phillips. We know him as Bernie. Dr. Phillips will be presenting today the seminar, Fulfilling Our Infinite Potentials, Solving the World's Problems. Dr. Phillips received a bachelor's degree from Columbia, a master's degree at Washington State University, and his PhD from Cornell. He has had professorships at University of North Carolina and Illinois and Boston University. He will explain in 4 weekly sessions how participants can learn an interdisciplinary approach to human behavior, behavioral science, based on his lifetime of research integrating such knowledge. And so, with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Bernard Phillips. Thank you.
Thank you very much, George. And I also want to thank people who are not here, my co-authors in the book, who have worked so hard over years to put that together. And of course, the administration, Jeff, who could not be here today, and other administrators who really helped enormously. Now, I have to kind of apologize. I had to choose between wearing my glasses where I could read my notes, but I can't see you too well, or not wearing them where I can see you, but I can't. So I've decided to wear my glasses. Forgive me. To focus on a very quick overview, what are we going to do today and the next 3 times? What has brought you here? What can I present that will satisfy all the efforts that you've made to come here? And I welcome you. I am so appreciative. This is a wonderful audience. Well, there are just 2 ideas, just 2, that summarize the whole approach. And they are very, well, unusual ideas. They may seem usual, but I'll emphasize them right on through the seminar. The first one is the idea of a science of human behavior. Now, back in the middle of the 19th century, a French philosopher by the name of Auguste Comte had a vision. Things were not going very well in Europe at that time. This was the Industrial Revolution. Little children were tied to machines. Terrible things were happening as a result of that revolution. He saw the power of the physical sciences, physics, chemistry. Wow, what about human behavior? So he envisioned the idea of a science of society. Now, he influenced other people to join that effort over the last 2 centuries. Unfortunately, because of, well, we'll get into that, but the major reason is the narrow specialization without the integration of knowledge. We have not had a powerful science of human behavior. The second idea behind this seminar is the idea of the individual can have that power in his or her own hands. This is something that is not emphasized at all in the social sciences, even in psychology. But that idea will affect us right here. What we will be trying to do and I hope succeeding for everyone, or maybe almost everyone, is putting in the hands, my hands too, more, because it's a matter of degree, the power of a science of human behavior in our own hands. Imagine what that would mean for the world. Suppose we could influence others, and they in turn could influence others, and so on, so that more and more individuals would have that power. What would happen with regard to the full range of problems that are unsolved? Well, my vision is optimistic. It would be a wonderful thing. This would be a way of dealing with the possibility of nuclear catastrophe, climate change, racism, sexism, ageism, ethnocentrism. Not all at once. It would take time. But if we human beings had that potential, and we could in fact fulfill it to an increasing degree, one step at a time, wow, the world would be a different place. That's what the seminar is all about. Whether it works is not just in my hands, it's in our hands. There is a questionnaire, I'll tell you about it later. I'm filling it out as well as you. The focus is on self-image. The key idea there is whether we can, in fact, develop further the confidence that we have, our self-image. That's a very difficult thing to do. I realize that, and I'm sure you do. I think it can be done. My confidence is based more than anything else on my own efforts to apply these ideas to myself. I've spent a lifetime of getting the ideas without realizing, wait a second, it's one thing to have the ideas, it's quite another thing to apply them. It's been only a very short time that I have finally been able to apply it to myself. That doesn't mean that I'm Superman. All it means is that I can learn intellectually, continue to without limit, that I can develop my emotions further, which of course I need to do, without limit, that I can solve problems without limit. That's head, heart, hand. By the way, that's the way the book that you have in your hands is organized. The first two chapters, intellectual. The second two chapters, emotional. The third two, action. And the odd chapters start with the negative, problems with regard to intellectual. The second, the even problems with regard to all three. The even-numbered chapters are solutions. Now, one further point before getting into more specifics. Okay. Well, I must say, given my age maybe, somehow I've lost that other point, so I'll just move ahead. All right, what we're going to do here is deal with today. What about today's seminar? There are 6 parts of today. All right. The first part is the direction, the scientific direction. It's a little personal here, but let me get it. There it is. There's C. Right. Well, I'll explain in a moment. The second part is the basic scientific, the basic problem that scientific direction points toward. What is No, we can think of, oh, well, we have shooting in schools, we have what's happening in Ukraine, we have this. Those are all problems, but they're not the deeper, invisible problem. What is the deeper, invisible problem that the social scientists mainly have figured out to a great extent? And then within the second point, what is a direction for solution? Well, I'm going to... No.
You think this is a new problem?
No, wait a second. There's going to be a discussion. I would appreciate if you could hold your comments until... I think I'm having problems here. Let's see, just a minute. I can't get it back. Whoops.
Clicking. Okay, hold on. Stop clicking. Okay, now click. Just no, why you?
Oh, I wanted to go backwards. Oh, I go with the left hand one backwards.
Yes.
Oh, that's the
Okay,
problem.
wait a second, Brian.
I think I've got it now.
Okay, now to go backwards.
Okay, got it. Okay, there we go. All set. It's clicking on the wrong part. Okay, so we're talking about the 6 parts. The first, once again, the scientific method direction for solving problems and for understanding the basic problem that we have. The second, what we have learned from that approach, namely the basic problem and the basic direction for solutions. The third is not in the textbook. The third is what we're doing in the seminar. Okay, what do you do now that we understand in general basic problem, direction for solution, action? So that's the third. How do we apply this to ourselves? Without that, we're nowhere. But with that, not that you get it from what I say, but this is what we have to work with all month long. It won't come easily. We are presently, all of us, even the most successful ones of us, you may not believe this, but I believe it, we are victims of what I might call a bureaucratic way of life. Not that every country is the same, not that every individual is the same. We're all different. Some of us are a little bit less victims than others, but we're all victims, is the idea. So getting out of it is a big deal. So that's the third part. The third part is, well, the second part, the problem and the solution. The third part is how do you get out of it. The third is the technology. What do we do? And the fourth and fifth are also technologies, more specific, like self-image. We have to focus on that and so on. And finally, the sixth is a surprise. I'm not telling you what that is. We'll get to it, and I hope we will all be surprised with that. So, let me go into the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth now. And by the way, I should say that in the fifth is a discussion. That technology, it's not what I'm going to present. Hopefully, I have to look at my watch here so that there's time. We will have between a half hour and 45 minutes for discussion. So hold your questions, but do have questions, not just questions, whatever you want to say. You can contradict anything and everything I've said, and I would be pleased to field anything that you have to say. I know not everyone is going to agree with me, and that's perfectly fine. All right, here we go with one. And I have up on the screen there the man who changed my life. I was a pre-medical student at Columbia. I had 2 years under my belt. I had all kinds of sciences. As a matter of fact, I'm extremely proud. My best grade was an A+ in chemistry. Oh, I'm very proud of that. I keep remembering it for some reason. I had physics, I had math, the whole thing, biology, of course. Then I was on the tennis team, and another player suggested, hey, there's this course that is given by this sociologist. His name is Mills. Why don't you look at it? So I audited that course. This man was very unusual. As a matter of fact, so unusual that at the end of the 20th century, I'm talking about moving forward to 1998, there was a meeting in Montreal of the International Sociological Association. I had been privileged to talk about the impact of Mills on sociologists at that time. The members of the International Sociological Association rated his most famous book, The Sociological Imagination, as the second most influential book for the entire 20th century for sociologists. He was a loner. He didn't stay just with sociology. He was all over the place. He was in all kinds of magazines, talking in many universities throughout the world. There you see him. He would come to school on a motorcycle, as loud as he could make it, I imagine. He had a coonskin cap with a huge tail waving in the breeze. We were on the second floor of Hamilton Hall, and we were watching him through the window. And then he came in, and he wowed us. He was amazing. Well, the crucial point for Mills, why am I emphasizing Mills so much? Let me read a sentence from his most famous book. This is on page 40 to 41. Here we go. And here you will get the direction for the way social science should be, but not, is not. And that's what we're going to change here in this room and now. The sociological imagination is the capacity to shift from one perspective to another, from the political to the psychological, from examination of a single family to comparative assessment of the national budgets of the world, from the theological school to the military establishment, from considerations of an oil industry to studies of contemporary poetry. That is what can be done, what should be done, if you are to follow the idea that what is the nature of the scientific method? One way of understanding comes from Isaac Newton. You must stand on the shoulders of giants. Well, if you stand on the shoulders of just psychologists, or in particular, it's much narrower than that. In sociology and in all of the social sciences, there are so many subsections within the American Sociological Association. There are no less than 53 sections: theory, methods, health, racism, sexism, etc. They don't communicate with one another. They fail to be scientific because science requires you to stand on all the relevant giants. So what we have today is ignorance of human behavior. Nothing less. We haven't pulled it together, but we can. I'm not saying that those pieces of information are useless. What I am saying is that they are very useful, but they can't take us very far unless they are integrated. Well, Mills pointed toward that integration. And so I spent my entire life trying to follow in his footsteps and develop a powerful science of human behavior. And now, with the seminar, what I am trying to do is a teaching job for myself as well as you, and not just you, but moving much further if we can succeed. Namely, pull that understanding into ourselves. This is the second thing. A science of human behavior is no good unless it's inside of people. And we'll see in the second part, which I'm moving into now, that we have deep problems with regard to what has been revealed about this scientific method that I've been working on and others, colleagues, throughout my life. So let's move to the second part. What are the basic problems of society? What is the basic problem of society, not what are, and what is a direction for solutions? Okay. That's the cover of the book you have. That's what me and 4 co-authors worked for 6 years pulling together. And the focus has been the following, and we build largely on sociology has been more central than the other fields, because it is sociologists who came very close to the idea I'm going to be putting forward. Now, let me keep going here. Beyond that, that is, let me emphasize, that is the website that I'm suggesting that you get into and read. It has like the highlights in the book. It's extremely helpful. And it's simply, you get it from, there's a Renaissance man. The book points toward pulling knowledge together, but it doesn't do what we can do now in the third part of today. It's, the website is behavioral dash, I think it's on one of the things that you've got, behavioral-scientists, plural.com. Behavioral science. So I'm suggesting that you take a look at that in between sessions. Very helpful. Okay, so what then is the basic, no, I'm into that. Let me get back here. I have to get all the way back. Okay, there we have on the right an image of our basic problem. It's a seesaw, that's all it is. And on the left you have a stairway, a basic solution. Now, of course, it's just a metaphor, but I think it's an extremely powerful metaphor. And let's look at it a little bit more thoroughly here. As a matter of fact, one way of getting into it, to break things up a little bit, your book includes lots of little stories that lighten things up. And I'm going to read one story that unfortunately my first co-author, Tom Savage, could not be here today. He has a back problem. And so, but he and I are very close collaborators. And near the beginning of the book, he tells a little story which illustrates what's on screen. So let me read that. It just takes a few minutes. And here we go. I'm starting at the bottom of page 3 here. And what I'm trying to do here in reading this is to begin to illustrate the basic problem that is largely invisible. You have to understand the problem before you can get to the solution. I'm saying all the efforts presently throughout the world to solve problems, they are wonderful as far as they go, but they don't go deeply into the basic problem I'm talking about now. And therefore, like school shooting, what do you do about that? What do you pass a law? Doesn't seem to work, even passing laws. What do you do about racism? What do you do about what's happening in the Ukraine? Well, my vision is what you do is deal with the underlying problem, which is our entire way of life, nothing less. You have to go back to the origins of the human race. It's not just a question, oh, well, what happened 20 years ago, that's what did it. We were doing so well, and then look, we've gone backwards. No. It's much deeper. You have to go back to the origins of the human race to be able to figure out what is the basic problem. And now, what is this bureaucratic way of life? I mean, I don't use it as a swear word, and I'm not suggesting that everything we've achieved as a human race is terrible. No, the bureaucratic way of life has been wonderful in so many ways, but it's limited, and the limitations are now coming to the fore more and more. What is it first? Before we can get to the solution, we have to look at the problem. What is the problem? I'll read this story that'll give you a hint, and then I'll go into it further here. So I'm into now the second part of, and I guess I'm looking at my watch. I'm not doing too well in terms of timing, so I have to speed up. So let me move ahead, because I do want to have a lot of time for discussion. All right, here we go. Tom Savage has a story producing insight into the nature of our problems, as well as a direction for solving them. It took place when he was 7 years old and had to do with his first crisis of faith. Now, Tom, if some of you know, was a minister here in Sarasota for many years. A volunteer Sunday school teacher had just told his class the story of the Israelites' escape from Egypt. At the Red Sea, Moses had parted the waters, and the Jews all went safely through. But when Pharaoh, with his army and chariots, followed in hot pursuit, Moses closed the waters over them. At that point, Tom jumped up and yelled, "What happened to the horses? Surely God didn't drown the horses." The poor teacher, sputtering, could offer no defense. Tom would not calm down, for he believed in an all-powerful and all-righteous God, and he would not tolerate a teacher who dared to stray from those beliefs. The result, however, was that Tom became perhaps the first kid ever to be kicked out of Sunday school. And he really was. I mean, I asked him that he's not just a metaphor. Tom had uncovered 3 key components of our bureaucratic way of life. Now we're getting serious and specific here. The nature of a bureaucratic way of life, not just a swear word here. And look now at the seesaw, which is the illustration here. Patterns of persisting hierarchy. There you have hierarchy. You're either on top or you're on bottom. 2, I'm not saying that's all there is to life, of course, but this is the invisible but very powerful part of everyone's life. If you think of all of our institutions, economic, political, family, religious, all of them hierarchical, persisting hierarchy. 2, narrow specialization without integrating knowledge. Well, on the seesaw, the stairway, I have to describe a little bit more. It's not a ladder type of thing. Imagine the stairway, and here is the vision of an evolutionary way of life, because I'm enlarging what you see on the screen. Imagine the stairway is wide enough for the entire human race. Okay, that's everyone. And imagine that it doesn't narrow as you get further up. There is a vision of everyone, extremely democratic idea, moving up. And also you can move across. You're in one specialty, you can contact people in others because the stairway is very wide. You can move toward another specialty and another, and you can learn from others and they can learn from you and so on. So imagine how that breadth is so different from the seesaw. Okay, continuing to read. What Tom also achieved with his outburst was nothing less than illustrating how to confront effectively a bureaucratic way of life. He dared to, one, question authority. He moved beyond the simplicity or narrowness of the ideas of authorities as illustrated by the good-evil biblical story. And then the third is he developed his own understanding personally. Okay, so there you have the vision of the basic problem and a direction for solution. But it does not tell us anything. The book doesn't do the job that I'm trying to do in the seminar. Okay, what do you do with these ideas? How do you get them inside of yourself? One of my colleagues, Neil, I meet with colleagues over the phone every week. I sort of have a metaphor for him. He was like the bulldog who grabbed my leg and he wouldn't let it go, and he kept saying, well, how do we apply this? What do you do with all of this knowledge? Well, that's where we're getting at now, in the seminar, not in the book. Okay, what do we do? How do we? Well, there is a study. There are many studies in the book, outside of the book, etc. But I'm focusing on one study in particular that is incredibly powerful. Without going into details about it, given the time, it was a joint study. Well, it was based on the work of a Dutch futurist who wrote. What he did was examine the entire history of Western society, going way back and coming way forward. He was asking the question, what were the characteristics, the image of the future, that were characteristic of those movements that were successful and those that were not? And he found there were four basic characteristics that he emphasized. And if I can find them in my notes, I will go into that. But here we go with three. Okay. The four basic characteristics. If you want, how do you change the individual in society? Okay. Not that this study does it all, but this is about as good as any I've ever seen. First, there must be a widespread crisis that people are aware of. Wow, we have it today. Without that, you can't get any basic change in the individual or society. Second, there must be the promise of how you solve the problem. So we have that to some extent already in that second part of today. Then the next two parts have to do with the individual. It has to do with everyday life, what we're doing at this moment and the next, and after we leave the seminar, and then tonight and tomorrow and so on. Unless we change or deal with our everyday life in accordance with our vision of how to solve problems, we're nowhere. And this is the difficulty of what we're all facing in this seminar. We have already established a way of life that's very deeply ingrained in us. How do we change that? Can we change that? Well, that's what this idea is. It must be changed, and we will be motivated by the fact, if we're aware of it, if we become aware of it, that the problems are mammoth. They are pushing the human race toward its very end, and unless we change, there is no future for new generations. So the mundane, the word mundane, the ordinary everyday behavior must be involved. And I'm not saying how yet, but that image of the stairway will illustrate it, but I will say more about this third phase here. And then there must be a habit of not just doing this once in a while, not just changing our everyday behavior once in a while, but frequently until it becomes a habit. Now, more specifically, okay, what kind of change are we talking about? Well, everyday life, what we're doing right now. It isn't the question of you always have to be better and better and better everything you do. No. But the idea is improvement where possible and doing well in everyday life as best as one can. That's such a simple idea. But what is different about what I've just said and where I'm trying to go in the seminar is we bring forward within our everyday life the first two ideas that I put forward. The vision of no limit to the individual development. In other words, let's say I'm walking for exercise, someone else is walking for exercise along with me outside. Okay. He or she has the idea, oh, I'm going to improve my health. That's great. I have the idea, yes, I'm going to improve my health, and also, this is the difference, I'm moving toward evolution, personal and world evolution, that there's no limit. Now that vision changes everything you do because over time, let's put it, let me wipe that out here. What it does is change over time your self-image until you have the sense, wow, don't have to remain a victim of a bureaucratic way of life. Notice that the seesaw is tied to the ground. I can keep moving up with no limit. That vision makes all the difference. I'm saying we can develop that vision, and that vision can in turn apply to our everyday behavior, and we can continue to develop ourselves, and our self-image can, little by little, change, develop. Okay, that's the key idea of the third. Now, once again, I'm looking at my watch, not doing too well. Okay, here we go with the fourth. And we have here, let me mention the fourth and fifth. The fourth has to do with a questionnaire. I'm going to try to develop this whole approach as a new discipline in the world, behavioral science. I could use a little help with regard to, this won't do it all at once, but it's just a little help. A questionnaire about what is the impact of this seminar on you. So inside of your book, and I have extra pencils here in case you need them, but there's a questionnaire. There's 10 questions. If you can open up that book and open up the questionnaire now and look at that, and what I'm asking is if you can fill that out over the next 5 or 10 minutes and then hand it in. There's going to be this is a before-after experiment. I'm going to be giving you a questionnaire at the end of the last meeting, and I'll be comparing the before and the after. It's a simple thing. It's not perfect, but it will help me to have an experiment that will help me to move toward developing a powerful, a new science, a behavioral science. So it's just putting down from 1 to 10. Let me look at the questions. No, I have it here. That's all right. Yes, if you could fill it out now. On a scale of 1 through 10, with 1 indicating very little and 10 very much, write the number that best conveys your own view. We'll just allow like 10 minutes for this. So just the 10 questions, and we'll just take 10 minutes for that.
My old book, so I don't have a
Here,
questionnaire.
take this.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not going to collect them. You'll just hand it in at the end. If they're anonymous, so you just put your birth date at the end. That's the way I will put together the first and the last. But no names on it, please.
Do you have any more?
Yeah, a lot more. Let's see where they are, though. Oh, here they are. Do you need a pencil too?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Anyone who doesn't have one? Okay. Okay, I'm going to have to move ahead, even keep filling it out, but given the time, I have to move ahead with what we're doing. The fifth thing, the fourth was the questionnaire. The fifth is a 3-minute video that I'm going to show. And we'll discuss it after. It's, I think, very important. And let's look at that. Music festival. Okay. What I wanted to do there is to illustrate how you can start with a crazy idea, with a strange, this guy dancing in a crazy way, or a very strange idea, which is like what I'm presenting here. And then one other person joins, and then another, and then another. In other words, the idea is, if you look at the big problems like climate change or nuclear war, how can what we are doing here have any impact whatsoever on anything big? Well, the answer following that music festival, it can happen one step at a time. We can influence others, and they in turn others, and so on. So the big question, what do you deal with what do you do with the homeless, affordable housing, poverty, disease? One step at a time, providing you have a vision of the human race, of every single individual as having incredible potential. Now the time has come for discussion. And I'm going to just step down here, and there's a microphone. Linda, where are you? Okay, I'm going to she's going to give the microphone. Well, maybe we don't need the microphone. Maybe we'll see if, but now is the time for you to not just ask questions, but any comment whatsoever. Okay, I guess, yeah, maybe the microphone is a good idea. I don't know. I keep changing it. Here.
Is this working? Yeah, I guess it is. Okay, I have a question. Actually, I read through some of the qualifications for this new interdisciplinary sciences, and I saw nothing about metaphysics. Is it because you eschew them altogether, or you haven't studied them, or you think they have no impact?
I have, and metaphysics is central, and I will explain why in a moment. As a matter of fact, in the second session, I will go into the many different fields of knowledge. Okay. It's just today. Look, we're over time as it is. I didn't have time. The key, and this is more philosophy and so on, a major finding that unfortunately sociologists and social science didn't take seriously enough. Thomas Kuhn, K-U-H-N, a historian and a philosopher, wrote a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. This was in the 70s. It impacted all fields. The idea was that you have to go up the ladder of abstraction of language to the most abstract ideas. This is where I get the idea of the bureaucratic way of life and the evolutionary way of life, by going up to the highest levels of abstraction. Without that, I couldn't make this presentation. So this is absolutely essential. Unfortunately, what happened with sociologists, they went up somewhat. They have 5 different theoretical orientations in sociology. So they came up with the idea that, and the key word is paradigm, that sociology is a multi-paradigm science rather than getting up to bureaucratic versus evolution. Nothing more important than that. Philosophy. Okay. Yeah, there's someone there.
Can you define sociology and social science?
Absolutely. I'll do my best. Well, in general, the social sciences focus on human behavior. But in particular, if you go back to Auguste Comte, who started the whole field, he defined it as a science of society. Now, what has happened since his time, almost 180 years ago or so, is sociology has broadened enormously, so that it is to define, it deals with the individual as well. I would say it is a science of society that emphasizes human interaction. Interaction is not, it doesn't emphasize personality structure. Now, but it emphasizes interaction. Now, as far as defining the other fields, I can not take the time now because I hadn't figured that out exactly, but I will give you a definition in the next. I don't want to take the time to struggle with this. The next time I will come up with an answer to your question about defining the other fields. Sure.
Hi, Bernie. Do you think it's inevitable in an individualistic society that people stop finding meaning in their interactions with other people? And how do you restore meaning to people who find life meaningless,
Beautiful question. It is not inevitable, but the key thing, remember, what I'm focusing on here is codified, solid academic knowledge. Now, the best dissertation that I directed at Boston University by a man named Jack Levin it's in your book if you look up the Levin experiment, that deals directly with the question of aggression, all kinds of aggression, the whole range of racism, sexism, ageism, war even, bullying. What can be done about that? Now, not that this one experiment solves all the problem, it points in the same direction we're talking about here. It was an experiment that he did with college introductory students of sociology, a couple of classes. And what he did, it was a before-after experiment where he he measured the degree of aggression against a minority group before and after he introduced certain things. So it was like the questionnaire we're doing here, before-after experiment. Okay. He frustrated, after the before measure, when everyone's degree of aggression was measured in some way, he frustrated them tremendously, analogous to the frustrations we have in modern society. That what he did is he gave them a supposed aptitude test for graduate school, and he flunked all of them absolutely miserably, at the same time telling them how well people at Northeastern University were doing and other universities. So they were all, and they believed it, because afterwards he checked that. And what happened was, following the usual frustration, aggression, so many studies in the social science, frustration leads to aggression. But one small group, he measured the people who increased their aggression. They compared their grades, whenever they got grades, to other students or the class average. A small number of students compared their grades to their own previous grades. Well, of course, the latter students did not increase their aggression. The former students, who illustrate what's going on in the world in general, did. In other words, I'm going beyond this. If we develop an evolutionary oriented society where we compare ourselves like the stairway to our own previous development, we're not going to be. We're going to learn to be less and less aggressive. Whereas if we continue the way we are with our basic way of life, with the frustration, aggression, given increasingly effective tools for destroying human life, we're going to go down the tubes. There is a solution to point us from the seesaw toward the stairway. Other comments here?
What's the solution?
The solution is personal development. The solution is moving like those students who did not increase their aggression, because they didn't compare themselves with others. They focused on their own development, and they succeeded that way in their own lives. And we can too, to the extent that we get away from looking outward to how high are we relative to others, and look at how high we are relative to our own potential. Yes?
Do you think the community plays an important role in teaching people how to be like that? Or do you think that's something that someone needs to find within themselves on their own?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that. Say that again in another word.
I'll be slower, sorry. Do you think that there's a necessary communal component to teaching people how to have that sense of self, that self-esteem that's required to, enact real change in the world?
I think, yes, absolutely, that we are oriented presently very much in an outward-oriented social way. Love is the answer to all the problems, supposedly. So from a practical point of view, if we are in this group attempting to develop ourselves, to the extent that we relate to other people who reinforce us, or we reinforce them back and forth, that is going to help very much. In the questionnaire, treating, if others treat us as not just a 10 ones, but closer to 100, that is very important. We still have some time for more. Let's see, we have half an hour left, so that's all right. We have more time for discussion. Before I wrap it up with the surprise.
Your presentation is based on the assumption that
Who's talking? I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the presentation is based on the fact that that social science has information that is believable, that there is knowledge that is concrete, that we can accept certain things as true.
Right.
And yet we're presently living in a society that wants to deconstruct all
Right.
scientific method.
Right.
That doesn't want to believe that science is true.
Right. Okay. Let me answer that. Did everyone hear that? Mm-hmm. Okay. I think a key reason why we have the present situation where truth is up for grabs very much. I'm with you on that. That is a horrible situation that we have now. And I think the reason more than anything else is the failure of the social sciences to get their act together and pull their knowledge together and actually solve problems like physics, engineering, I'm talking about technologies, to develop powerful technologies that work. So it isn't a question of, is this true or not, but look, this machine works. What are you going to question whether there's truth behind it? So if we can develop the technologies that are, and the key technology is ourselves. If we can show, remember the 3-minute video, that we can do something effectively, others will join us and still others will join us. The question is, the effectiveness of social science has not been there. And I'm claiming, with all of the knowledge that I'm going to try to present, not just today. Don't judge it just by what I presented today. I didn't have time to present more than a few little studies here. But they all build on one another. And my conviction is that they can be powerful technologies for solving problems. We don't have that now. Once we have it, people will believe it because it works. It will work. Does that answer you? Yes. Wait for.
Thank you. Hey there. I think, as I see it, we have solved the problems. We just have not implemented them. And so there is a great vastness between accumulation of knowledge, but acting upon that knowledge to make the results.
So you're saying that we have solved the basic problems?
So,
But what
yes.
about war, climate change, racism, sexism, ageism, what about all those problems? Have we really solved them?
Well, they exist, and we have answers for them. We just haven't acted upon those answers. That's one of the things that we are known for as a country.
Well, I would agree with you that our country even though I was lumping everyone together in that seesaw, our country is doing very well compared to other countries. I'm not denying that. We are closer to the stairway than others in general, and I'm very proud of that. But my feeling is, and you're certainly entitled to your own belief, my belief is that the problems are not, the basic ones are not being solved, that there is no solution that people have developed, like change the fundamental way of life from the bureaucratic to the evolutionary. I haven't seen that anywhere. I think my opinion is that we have to dig deeply at the way of life, the entire way of life. That's trying to deal with school shooting, for example, the way we are now, is never going to work. And the same for most other problems that we're trying to deal with, because they're not broad, the approach is not broad enough to deal with the underlying problem, which is our entire hierarchical, specialized, and ineffective way of, conformist is the third, conformist way of life. So, of course, we don't feel, none of us, that we're conformists. But I'm saying that deep down, if you think of the different institutions you're in, there's a lot of conformity right on through, throughout life. So we differ somewhat, that's fine. And maybe you'll convince me more, maybe I'll convince you. We'll see how it goes.
Can I ask one more question? Sorry
Sure.
to hog the mic. What objective measures do you have to measure whether there's being success in that way, in the way you're talking, where there's improvement? What objective measures?
Right. That's a big problem. What are the objective measures that this improvement can happen? I can mention several things which are not exactly based on changing our way of life. For example, in the book, you have the idea of Kaizen. It's a Japanese term that means continuing improvement. And what happened, like the Marshall Plan in Europe, in Japan, after World War II, the devastation was incredible. And some scientists helped Japanese industry. They came over there, they helped to figure out an approach for industrialization. And the emphasis was on every person in industry. Just improve a little bit, improvement, continuing improvement. Well, that's not the same. That's kind of bureaucratic because it was pushed by the leaders of industry and so on. It's not the same thing as what I'm talking about, but it's partially there. That if people can continue to do that, let's say they're pushed bureaucratically, sure, but if that's possible, now I'll give you one other example. And here, I think I have to go to my desk, so give me a moment here to get up there. No, I didn't bring the book with me, but there was a Stanford University professor, Carol was her first name. I don't remember her last name. What she did was engage, she went to an Indian reservation where the young students were doing incredibly poorly, at the very bottom of what they were supposed to do in their age group. And somehow, she, with her emphasis on the same idea of continuing improvement, she got them to be at the very top of the educational ladder. Amazing. And she's a well-known person. 10 years, she did a TED Talk. I wish I remembered her last name. Carol, it begins with an S. I don't remember it offhand. Those are two little examples of data. But I'm with you that we don't have We here, this is my feeling, have to demonstrate what is not out there. We can do it because there's not an example out there, because the interdisciplinary approach that we're talking about here is, I don't see it out there. I don't see it applied out there. But we can do it, is what I'm saying. We will have to do it, and we can. Yes.
I must say I agree with the previous speaker. There are solutions to all these problems you mentioned, and many countries in the world have found them and implemented them. We are the only country in the world that does not have universal health care. There are many things. The Scandinavian countries have eliminated racism. There are many things that other countries have found solutions to that we have not done. And what is the will of Americans to do these things? Let's start with the basic American assumption that we are the greatest. We don't need to improve. We're already wonderful. A lot of people have that feeling in this country. They don't want to grow implementally. They already think they're fine.
There's a lot that you said that I agree with. For example, our prison system with our death penalty compared to what's going on in Scandinavia, we are ridiculous in terms of being able to rehabilitate anyone. It's awful. And I guess there are many other examples where other countries have improved more than we have. Certainly, our health care needs a lot of improvement. But what I'm talking about is very, very fundamental problems, which there's a disagreement here, that we have not solved. And I'm worried about nuclear war. I'm worried about climate change. I'm worried about even racism. I don't see racism as having been solved anywhere in the world. No, I don't think so. As a matter of fact, anti-Semitism, for example, is increasing throughout the world. Not just racism in general has been increasing. So we differ on that. I'm not saying, I am proud of what's been happening, like the Scandinavian prison system. I'm proud of that, sure. But the big problems have not been solved and are getting worse from my perspective. Yes?
I struggle too with a lot of the issues that we've
Just a minute, wait for that, yeah.
I struggle too with a lot of the issues that people have brought up, and it's funny how I'm here at this lecture because sometimes the universe presents you with information you need to know to struggle with those things. And I am totally impressed, quite frankly, with, now that I'm processing what you're saying, I'm very much impressed with this idea of persisting hierarchy, personal conformity to the powers, narrow specialization without integrating knowledge. It seems to me that this is just, you wanted to have a discussion. It seems to me that our inability to see the other guy's point of view holds us back, and they can't see ours either. So but it seems to me when I say, this is the answer, let's just cancel the Second Amendment, then I have to think about all the other things that involves. And America's a little bit not easy because there's so many of us here, so many different kinds of us, which is what makes us great, but it also makes it very complicated, I think. So I really appreciate, what I'm understanding from what you've presented is that what Tom discovered these key components of our bureaucratic, I've never heard it called that, bureaucratic way of life, but I think that makes a lot of sense. And he dared to question authority and develop his own understanding, which to me means seeing both sides of the issue.
Let
And-
me respond
Yes,
with
sir.
this. Go back to the 3-minute video. Initially, people were laughing at the person who was dancing. Suppose we were able to offer people, at no charge, the ability to develop themselves further. Would they choose that or putting other people down? Because if they put other people down, they have to stay down with them. I'm suggesting the reason why this seems far out is that we've never done it before. It's new. We can do it. The knowledge, for the first time in history, with all of those specialized pieces of knowledge, and I've just given you a taste of it. The 2 major studies, the Levin experiment was one study, and then the Bush-Pollock, the futuristic study. Those are powerful studies. There are so many others. I struggled very hard to get this into myself. Believe me, I'm not saying this is easy, but having done it, I know now that it can be taught. And I'm not claiming I'm different from anyone else. We all have that incredible potential. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone has to start, hey, are you changing the world? No. If someone is in trouble, has problems, maybe a little bit of optimism, a little bit of self-confidence before they die would be beautiful, would be wonderful for them. Other people might go further. I'm not saying we all should, come on, let's change the world. No, but let's develop a vision of that possibility for every human being. And let's illustrate it insofar as we can in our own lives. It's getting toward the end, so what I want to do, unless there's one more question here, go ahead. No. Okay. The surprise. Okay, I have to get up here because that's... okay. Now, it's a little bit of humor here, but I'm not departing from what I've been talking about all during this time. One of the key ideas that I've tried to emphasize is going back to the seesaw. We are our own worst enemies in so many ways. When we fail, instead of blaming, well, we've been victims of a bureaucratic way of life all our lives, why blame ourselves? Let's turn it around and feel, okay, I can learn from this failure, and that doesn't have to hold me down. So the negative, dealing with the negative, dealing with the fact, face it, we're on the seesaw. Relax. There's a stairway out there waiting for us. So that's what this is about, working with the seesaw and the stairway. And this is a song by Johnny Mercer that I'm going to start illustrating, and I hope I can get you to join me in the chorus. You don't have to know all the words, but here we go. All right. And this is Accentuate the Positive, Johnny Mercer. I don't know, I've never done this before, so I don't know what I can do. You got to accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch on to the affirmative, Don't mess with Mr. In Between. You got to spread joy up to the maximum, bring gloom down to the minimum, have faith or pandemonium, liable to walk upon the scene. To illustrate this last remark, Jonah in the whale, Noah in the ark. What did they do just when everything looked so dark? You got to, man, they said we better accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch on to the affirmative, don't mess with Mr. In Between. One more time. This time, let's shake the rooftops here with this.
Hey, let's get up and do it.
Okay. You got to accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch on to the affirmative, don't mess with Mr. In Between. You got to spread joy up to the maximum, bring gloom down to the minimum, have faith or pandemonium that liable to walk upon the scene. To illustrate this last remark, Jonah in the whale, Noah in the ark. What did they do when everything looked so dark? Man, they said we better accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch on to the affirmative, don't mess with Mr. In Between. Well, that's it.
I think you got the point across.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
There, I turned it off.
And I did the best I could. Hopefully,
Well, you got us started.
I got what?
You got us started.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I could use that.
You know,
Thanks a lot, Linda.
The fellow that sang that was Bing Crosby and going